cousin accused me of sexually harassing her, and now, no one trusts me. I was 18 when everything fell apart. My cousin Jade, who was 4 years older than me, accused me of sexual assault. It came out of nowhere, and what made it worse? My family believed her. Growing up, Jade and I were close. She was the daughter of my uncle, my mom's younger brother, who raised her alone after his ex-wife left them. My uncle was a solid guy, always did everything for Jade, even built up a college fund for her. But when she turned 18, he told her she was on her own financially. He had his own retirement to think about. She didn't like that. Jade majored in STEM, and my uncle thought she'd be able to manage her own finances, find a job, and take care of herself. But she had other ideas. She constantly argued with him, complaining that he should continue to support her education. She'd show up at our house, ranting to my mom about how unfair he was being, and my mom would always side with her. But me? I stayed quiet. I agreed with my uncle. He'd done enough for her, and she needed to step up. One day, Jade came over to our house after another fight with her dad. My parents weren't home, so she ended up venting to me. I wasn't interested in hearing it. I told her that if she really wanted to keep studying, she'd have to figure out how to pay for it herself. I said it wasn't fair to expect her dad to keep supporting her. She didn't take it well. Jade exploded. She called me a spoiled brat, said I'd never understand what she was going through, and stormed out, crying. I didn't think much of it at the time. I figured she was just upset. But the next day, everything changed. My parents woke me up early, saying my uncle and Jade had come over, and it was serious. When I went downstairs, Jade started screaming, accusing me of sexually assaulting her the night before. She was crying, shaking, acting like she was completely broken. My uncle looked devastated, and my parents? They didn't even look at me. I tried to explain that it wasn't true, that she was lying, but no one listened. My uncle said Jade had come home the night before in tears, saying I had assaulted her. My parents didn't even ask for my side of the story. They were already apologizing to my uncle, begging him not to go to the police. My dad pulled me aside later and told me they convinced my uncle not to press charges. But there was a condition. I had to leave. They were sending me away to live with my great-uncle, far from the family. And to top it off, they gave Jade my college fund. I was furious, devastated, and helpless. No one believed me. My life fell apart in the span of a single day, all because of a lie. And that was just the beginning. So there I was, 18, kicked out of my own house, reputation destroyed, and shipped off to live with my great-uncle in a town I'd never even heard of. I'd gone from having a plan, college, friends, a future, to having nothing, all because Jade decided to destroy me. My great-uncle, Frank, wasn't exactly thrilled to have me there either. He was in his 70s, and he lived in this tiny, run-down house in a rural area. No Wi-Fi, barely any cell service, and the nearest town was like 30 minutes away. He didn't talk much, and made it clear I was just there until things blew over. I didn't even know what that meant. What was supposed to blow over? The fact that my whole family thought I was some kind of monster? I'd get these rare phone calls from my mom, usually once a week. Every conversation was the same. She'd start by saying she loved me, but then quickly remind me how I needed to understand Jade's trauma, and how hard it was for the family to navigate this situation. Not once did she ask how I was doing. Not once did she even consider the idea that I could be telling the truth. It was always about Jade, how she was coping, how she was healing. Healing from what? A lie she made up? It wasn't just the exile. They gave Jade my college fund, like I mentioned, and that burned me up inside. I had worked for that. I had plans, dreams, and now she was living off money that was supposed to be mine, pretending to be the victim while I rotted away in the middle of nowhere. My dad? He stayed out of it. He didn't call, didn't write. He'd made his choice. As months dragged on, I tried to make the best of it. I got a part-time job at a grocery store in town, saved up a little money, but it was hard. People talk in small towns, and word had spread that I wasn't living with Frank just because I wanted to. Even though the details were fuzzy to them, the fact that I was some sort of disgraced kid stuck. I wasn't making friends, and I sure as hell wasn't getting a fresh start. The worst part was knowing Jade was out there, living her life, going to school with my money. While I was stuck in limbo, she didn't reach out. She never apologized. I spent so many nights wondering why she did it. Was it because I sided with her dad? Was it revenge? Or had she just convinced herself I was an easy target, someone no one would defend? One day, about 8 months into my exile, I got a message from a mutual friend from back home. They had heard rumors, something about Jade's new life at college. Apparently, she was thriving. New friends, new life, and she wasn't exactly acting like someone dealing with trauma. The way my friend put it, Jade was living it up. I even saw a photo of her at a party, laughing and having the time of her life. So, there I was, stewing in my frustration, but something in me had shifted. That party picture of Jade? That was the last straw. I decided that if no one else was going to listen to me, I'd have to dig up the truth myself. I spent the next few weeks formulating a plan. I didn't have much money, but I had enough saved from my grocery store job to afford a bus ticket back home. And honestly, it felt like the only option left. I couldn't just sit in exile any longer, letting Jade get away with it all. I was going to confront her. I was going to find proof. Whatever it took, I was done playing the victim of her lies. I told Uncle Frank I was leaving, and for the first time since I'd moved in, he gave me a nod that felt supportive, like he knew this was something I needed to do. He didn't say much, but when I got on the bus, I could see him watching me from the porch, a slight wave as I left. That old man didn't talk a lot, but maybe, in his own way, he'd always believed me. When I got home, everything felt surreal. The house was just like I remembered, but it didn't feel like my home anymore. My parents were shocked to see me standing on the doorstep. My mom started with her usual speech about how we need to give Jade space, but I cut her off. I didn't have time for that anymore. I told her I was staying until the truth came out, and if she didn't want to believe me, that was fine, but she was going to hear me out. I started my investigation with the few contacts I had left from high school. The people who still talked to me, anyway. I combed through social media, messages, anything that might help. Jade had been careful, but not careful enough. Over time, I started to piece together a timeline. Who she was hanging out with, where she was going, and little by little, cracks started to appear in her story. Then came the breakthrough. One night, while scrolling through a classmate's Instagram, I stumbled across a video. It wasn't even about Jade, just someone recording a typical college party. But in the background, clear as day, I heard Jade laughing and telling someone, "I can't believe they actually bought that story. Pour my name. He's probably still living in the middle of nowhere." I could have said anything, and they would have believed me. My heart raced. I had the proof. It was all right there. She wasn't just exaggerating. She was proud of what she'd done. She had made up the whole thing to ruin me, and now I had her admitting it on tape. Armed with that video, I went straight to my parents. My mom watched it, her face draining of color as she realized what she had done, what they had done. The weight of her betrayal hit her like a truck, and for the first time, she apologized. Truly apologized. I could tell she was struggling to process it, that her blind loyalty to Jade had blinded her to the truth. But the best part? My dad, who had stayed silent this whole time, actually stepped in. He didn't say much, but I could tell he was furious. At Jade, at the situation, maybe even at himself. We all knew what had to be done next. The confrontation with Jade was intense. We sat her down, and at first she tried to play the victim again. Tears, the whole act. But when we showed her the video, her face turned pale. There was no denying it anymore. She had lied, and now everyone knew. There was no big dramatic fight after that. Jade apologized, but honestly, it didn't matter at that point. The damage was done. The trust was broken, but at least the truth was finally out. My parents, to their credit, did everything they could to make it right. They gave me back my college fund and cut off Jade's financial support until she worked through what she had done. I wasn't ready to forgive her, not yet, but at least I had my life back. I left for college a few months later. It wasn't the smooth transition I had once dreamed of, but it felt like freedom. I was finally able to start over, no longer living in the shadow of someone else's lies. And you know what? Life got better. I made new friends, studied what I loved, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control of my future. Jade, I haven't seen her in years. Last I heard, she's doing okay, but we're not close, and I don't think we ever will be. Some things you just can't fix. But me? I'm good now. Better even. I've moved on, I've rebuilt. And after everything, I learned something important. the truth always finds a way out. Even when it feels like the world's against you.